Hi, welcome back to Quality. This is your host, Yuka Nakasone. If you missed our last conversation with Kris Gill, I highly recommend going back to the last session. It's full of insight on leading through chaos. And today, we are continuing this conversation by diving into how we respond versus react, especially under pressure. Uh, Let me introduce you our guest. Kris Gill is an organizational psychologist and transformational leadership trainer of the trainers. He's a global executive coach, mentor, and trainer, author, and speaker whose work has helped thousands of leaders. He has published 6 books. They're available on Amazon. And I deeply trust him and his work. I'm so grateful to share this space with him today again. Thank you very much for coming. So let me start with a short story because we are going to talk about reaction and response, right? And I've worked with this with you through this transformational leadership training. Now I can catch myself reacting instead of responding to the situation. For example, very quick and easy example. For example, my daughter, when she doesn't clean up after herself or organize something that she needs to, maybe I shout instead of thinking, maybe she had a bad day, maybe didn't have time, instead of stopping and pausing and reflecting what might have happened, I just go, oh my God, she should have, So that's my reaction.
Right. And that's
So,
so common. I mean,
yeah.
that's you're not unique in that, we all do that.
Mm-hmm,
Question is, why, and the answer is, let me just play psychologist for a second and
mm-hmm,
say, the function of the human brain is to perceive what its senses are bringing in,
mm-hmm,
compare that to what it knows, what it's learned already, and then project into the next situation,
mm-hmm,
right? So what happens in the whole response, and by the way, that happens in, like a blink of an eye,
mm-hmm,
very, very rapidly, and it's constantly happening at every moment. Even you're nodding your head to me while I'm talking is,
mm-hmm,
in a sense, a reaction to your brain saying, "Oh, I know what Kris is talking about. He's going to say this next," and so then it nods and stuff. So
mm-hmm,
the brain's always doing this: take in, compare, project, take in,
mm-hmm,
compare, project. So the reactive mode is part and parcel of that. It's bound to happen because it's always comparing to what it knows. Now,
mm-hmm.
what it knows is not fact.
Yeah.
What it knows, what our brain has stored inside, is the story about the facts.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
when you were a kid and mom hollered at you for not cleaning up your room and stuff,
mm-hmm,
there's a story in there. It's like, oh, maybe that's what moms do,
mm-hmm,
and so it's encoded in there. So brain sees daughter not cleaning up, compares to, oh, scolded by mom, then
mm-hmm.
your reaction is, maybe that's the proper thing to do.
Yeah.
Simplistic example, but the point is that, we are always going to draw from that repository of experiences and
Mm-hmm,
stories about experiences that are the foundation of meaning
mm-hmm,
making in our brain. And
Yeah, we,
and
we are
that
meaning
that
making machine.
right. And that causes us to
Mm-hmm,
respond or react in a certain way. Now,
mm-hmm,
the distinction that you and I are making around response versus reaction is the the thing that's on autopilot is the reaction,
mm-hmm,
right? A response is something that is intervened we interrupt that, observe, compare, project. We interrupt
Mhm.
that and we say, well, wait a minute, is the story true?
Mhm.
Is the story always the same?
Mhm.
Do I have to choose? Do I have to do it this way just because
Mhm.
that's the way I've always done it? What if
Mhm.
I want to course of action? What if I want to be a different person? What if I don't want to reenact what my mom and dad did to me? You know,
Mhm.
and can I interrupt that cycle of meaning making? And the answer is
Mhm.
yes. And the yes is what we train people on. So,
Mhm.
just a shameless plug here in my book, Learning to Feel, what
Mhm.
we dig into is that our emotions, which by the way are what cause us to act. You know,
Mhm.
if you feel frightened, you act a certain way. If you feel
Mhm.
loved, you react a certain way. So our emotions are always causing us to be in motion. If you
Mhm.
uh, let the play on words go, but our emotions are caused by those thoughts that are
Mhm.
stored in that memory bank,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
what learning to feel is all about is going into the memory bank and saying,
Mhm.
all right, where was that story made up? Where did I first have that story? Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
it was when I was 6 years old, when I was
Mhm.
5 years old, and my
Mhm.
5 year old little brain was trying to make sense out of the world, and it
Mhm.
figured it out this way.
Mhm.
Now I'm 76 now, I'm I'm not 5 years old anymore.
Mhm.
Do I still want to act like a 5 year old? Because
Mhm.
that's where that's coming from, you know.
Mhm.
So my reactions are often based on old stories that have
Mhm.
been, embedded in us, and that's why we always react the same way, you
Mhm.
know. When we're in reaction mode, oh, there I am again. Oh, there's old
So
Yuka again, you know.
do you think that by changing our mode from automatically reacting from our memory or imagination, by definition, it's imagination because it's not true, right? Um, Instead, if we respond, what is going to happen? What's the result of
Well,
shifting from
yeah.
reaction mode to respond mode?
I think there's first that, how do we get to
Hmm.
response mode? Because the truth is, you're always going to be in reaction mode. That's what the
Okay.
brain does. The brain does that, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have a superordinate um, mission or goal or value that you want to respond appropriately
Hmm.
as opposed to being in reaction mode constantly. So
Okay.
in the last session we talked a little bit about having that vision. Well, if you have that personal
Hmm.
vision for who I want to be in this world, do
Hmm.
I, my men's team meeting last week, one of the guys there said, um, I'm not that guy. He reacted very strongly and negatively
Mm.
at a swim meet to a man who was being rude, and
Mm.
and afterwards he felt so embarrassed. He kept on saying, "I'm not that guy. I'm not." I said, "So who are you?" "Well,
Hmm.
I'm this." I said, "Well, good. Where did that reaction come from?"
Mm.
It didn't come from where I am, you
Hmm.
know. So the whole time you're sitting there getting PO'd about the guy, being, just rude and uncaring about the people
Hmm.
around him, you kept on going through a cycle in your head that talked you into
Hmm.
that which you're not.
Hmm.
Where did those thoughts come from?
Hmm.
Oh, So he tells me about a story when he was, a kid bicycling home from baseball practice. He had to pass under this bridge, and that's where all the bullies hung out.
Mm.
No. And so he always got beat up, and he decided one day he would not be the victim anymore.
Mm.
So
Okay.
here he is sitting in the bleachers at a
Hmm.
swim meet. This guy's being rude and things like that felt like bullying to him. You know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden the old brain kicks in, the old story kicked in.
Hmm.
But I'm not that person, he said.
Hmm.
I'm not that person anymore. Well,
Hmm.
good. So, what does the person that you are
Hmm.
do in a situation when you're feeling like you're not in control or somebody else is being rude to you? or
Mm-hmm.
bullying you? What do you now want to do? If you're not clear about that,
Mm-hmm.
your old reactions are just going to take over because they're there
Yeah.
and it's
And I
automatic.
guess
So it's a
I,
conscious
mm,
choice.
yeah, I guess, I guess we are not talking about do this for every single situation, but we are talking about um, going toward our vision, going toward our goal. Who who I am I needs to be, and
Mm,
if this reaction appropriate or not. When
yeah.
we get to the point, maybe we can shift. Is this what are we talking about right now?
Yeah. Can I use a personal example of yours?
Yes,
So
please.
when you and I talk, we talk about old Yucca or little Yucca
Mm-hmm.
and current Yucca, right?
Yeah,
We come up with two different people,
yeah,
right? And so what you're able to do is say, oh, that's little Yucca.
yeah.
You know, when you start identifying a reaction happening in you, say, oh, that's little
Mm-hmm.
Yucca, that's not me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so the first thing was you distinguished between I'm grown up now, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to act like little Yucca anymore,
Yeah,
right? I think that's the first step in this whole
yeah.
process is to really define who am I now? You know, and how do I want to be in this world? Do I want to
Mm-hmm.
constantly be a person who's controlled by their emotions and and their reactions to
Mm-hmm.
things that was based on something they made up when they were 5 years old? No,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be that. I want to be a grown up
Yeah,
now, you
yeah.
know? So grown up Kris and grown up Yuka
Mm-hmm.
are different than little Kris and little Yuka were, you know.
Yeah.
And so the clearer we get about, who that guy is for my friend or
Mm-hmm.
who I am, as a
Mm-hmm.
grown up or who Yuka is as a grown up, the
Mm-hmm.
clearer we get about that, the more we're able to as we're feeling ourselves go into reaction mode because we're always going
Mm-hmm.
to do that. But as
Mm-hmm.
soon as we feel that, we say, okay, what's at the base of this? Why am I
Mm-hmm.
reacting this way?
Mm.
Do we have time for a little personal story? I can about me.
Yeah, please.
Right. So a year ago, I had some very severe surgery on my back, and it
Mm-hmm.
was immensely painful. And it was supposed to be a in and out one day thing. I ended up being there for a whole week because it was a lot more
Mm-hmm.
serious than what they thought. So, my wife runs, as you know, runs a business, and so she was there the whole day of the surgery. Next day, she had to go to work and catch up on things that she
Yeah.
left behind. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we only had a phone call, and then the next day she came in for like a 2 hour visit, and then that was like Friday, and then Saturday she had a whole bunch of stuff to do, and then Sunday she came in for another 2 hour visit. So I've been there for like several days. I'm in a lot of pain and everything, and she's only visited me twice. you know.
Mm.
And Sunday evening, she calls up and she was in tears,
Mm.
feeling totally overwhelmed.
Mm.
Because I'm usually the person that cooks all the meals and cleans the
Mm.
house and does all this stuff, and she had
Wow.
to do that and run a business,
Mm-hmm.
and worry about me being in the hospital, all that kind of stuff. So she
Mm.
felt like overwhelmed. Now,
Mm.
reaction. My immediate reaction was, "Hey, what am I, chopped liver?" I'm the one that's in the
Yeah.
hospital. I'm the one that's in pain.
Mm.
Well, that didn't come out of my mouth, fortunately, because I caught myself in that reaction mode.
Mm.
And the next thought, now these things happen in less than a second. It's like these,
Yeah.
I'm going to slow it down. But the next thought was, where's that coming from?
Mm.
And I remembered a situation a long time ago. I was 6 years old. We were playing on the
Mm.
monkey bars. I was up on the highest one. I slipped and I fell 10 feet and landed on this arm here, broke it in
Wow.
three places.
Oof.
Went home crying. I'm a 6 year old.
Mm.
Mom says, I don't know what to do with this, but dad knows a lot about athletic injuries and stuff. He'll be home later. It was like noon. He didn't get home till 5. So she just, had me, lay down and cry.
Mm-hmm.
you know, Dad comes home. He says, oh, it's probably just a bad bruise. Let's put some ice
Mm.
on it and go to bed. And by the way, stop crying. Um, and the next morning we wake up and it's all swollen and purple and everything. So they take me to the hospital and they
Mm.
find out that, in X-raying it, they find out that I broke my arm in 3 places.
Wow.
So the thing that this little boy made up, this 6-year-old
Hmm.
made up is, hey, doesn't anybody believe me that I hurt?
Yeah.
That was the reaction mode. That was what was
Yeah.
happening when my wife said, I'm overwhelmed, and so the source code was there. Now, that's not who I am anymore. I'm a loving
Yeah.
partner in this. And so, because I knew that was where I was coming from, I also
Mm.
remembered that my wife, her history was her
Mm.
dad came down with a neurological disease when she was
Mm.
like 14 and
Mm.
went from, fully functioning to wheelchair bound
Wow.
and paralyzed, literally
Mm.
paralyzed in a matter of weeks. I mean, it just
Mm.
was so fast. So she went from being a 14-year-old kid to being the parent
Mm.
because she had 4 brothers and sisters, and her mom was just overwhelmed.
Mm.
So what was true for her in her reaction was, I'm in
Mm.
overwhelm. My husband, who by the way was the same height and weight of her father, we marry our parents, don't we?
Mm.
Um, her, is my husband going to be handicapped in a wheelchair, and am I going to have
Mm.
to do all this just like I did when I was like
Wow.
14? So she was in her reaction mode, I was in my reaction mode, but because we both know how to do this work,
Mm.
I I was able to respond and say, "Wow, this really hits you hard, doesn't it?" And we had this
Mm.
most tender, caring, loving conversation about the scaries that we're both feeling and
Wow.
where it came from and how to support each other. And
Mm.
that's choosing the response because I didn't go into reaction mode. I knew where my reaction was coming from. I knew where
Mm.
her reaction was coming from. And we could choose above that to do something
Wow.
else.
Yeah.
So
That's a
I know that's
great
a long story,
story.
but yeah.
Yeah. So at the practical level, if we talk about work for linguists,
Hmm.
what kind of shift they start to practice talking about reaction and response.
Well, yeah, let's look at what's the reaction, So,
Mm.
we may, as we've talked to a lot of people in the language industry over the last few years, we may, they may feel panicky,
Mm.
scared about what's happening to the industry because it used to be like this, now it's like this, and
Mm.
I don't know how to be part of that. So my reaction is, scared. My
Mm.
reaction is angry. My reaction is resistance. Could
Mm.
be any of those things. What I want to look at is where's the source of that?
Mm.
It's not the industry change, it's my reaction. You know,
Oh.
how do I want to react in a sane way
Mm.
so that I'm not reacting, but I'm actually choosing a response that is more appropriate for me as an adult facing uncertainty in the world? The
Mm.
last session, we talked about having clarity of vision and things like that. Kind
Mm.
of ports back to the same sort of thing. You know,
Mm.
I don't know what's happening in the industry. You don't know what's going to happen in the industry. We can
Mm.
guess, but I know what I'm doing. I'm choosing this path. I'm choosing to be this way. So, how can
Mm.
I, in the context of who I am and who I choose to be, how
Mm-hmm.
do I choose a different response than panic?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Wow.
different, there are days when you just want to pull the covers up over your head and stay in bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the response interpretation that will get
Mm.
you out of bed that day? You know,
Mm.
that's what we want to look at. I have a vision for myself. I know who I am,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's happening out there. It's crazy out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, I
You ought to
know.
be in my country. Thank God you aren't, right? But it's crazy in my country.
Mm.
There's so many things that are happening so rapidly,
Mm.
just not making any sense at all. It's easy for
Mm.
any of us in the United States to be panicky or
Mhm.
angry or, you know, just immobilized and we want to,
Mhm.
you know, stay in bed with the head, you know, with the covers up over our heads. So,
Mhm.
um, but what are we going to choose? You know, what's the
Yeah.
response that we're going to choose? That's what we keep
Mhm.
on asking.
Wow. That's very powerful. And that's the way I want to live, so I choose
Me
to,
too.
yeah, I choose to respond. First
Hmm.
choice is choose to respond and then keep choosing my response, right? So
And
that's what
you know,
we
and
want
you're
to
going
do.
to react. You're still going to
Mhm.
react, right?
Yeah.
Um, that doesn't go away. That's what the brain does, you know.
Hmm.
And so you might choose a response after the reaction happens, also.
Hmm. Hmm.
So don't beat yourself up if you still catch yourself in reaction mode and you do
Yeah.
something that is like, oh, that's little Yuka again. You know, it's like
Yeah.
don't get mad at yourself. You just say, okay,
Yeah.
so what do I choose to do instead of that now?
Hmm.
What's my response going to be?
Yeah.
And you know, so I go back to the person that I had a snappy reaction to, and I go
Hmm.
like, hey, that's not me, and I'm sorry I reacted that way. Here's how I
Hmm.
want to work with you on that, or here's what we want to do and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, but it's not like we default to reaction. It's
Hmm. Natural
the
state.
natural state of the brain.
Hmm.
And so it takes a lot of
Hmm.
willpower and
Hmm.
self-awareness to be able to choose as opposed to
Hmm.
react.
Yeah. And that's very powerful. And so I have a question to the viewers or listeners. Where are you reacting instead of responding right now? Think about
Mm,
it and please comment if you if you don't mind. And if you have any questions, we can answer as well. So let's keep talking. And
mhm.
thank you very much, Kris, for this enlightening episode again. And you have several books, right? And they can
Mhm.
find your publications on Amazon, and they can find
Yeah.
your um, profile on LinkedIn. Um, where
Hmm.
else? You have
Oh, and
website.
you know, I have a website, yeah,
Hmm.
called Innerworks Consulting. There's a dash between Innerworks and Consulting
Hmm.
.com. But I mean, that would be you could find that on LinkedIn as well. You could go to my website and stuff. So there are a lot of different ways to find me. Or just type my name into the search bar,
Yeah.
and stuff will come up too. Um,
Right.
yeah. Um, so yeah, where are we at reacting? You know, the answer is we're always reacting.
Mm.
Where do we want to respond instead of
Hmm.
react?
Yeah.
Because I'm always going to be in reaction mode. You know, that's
Hmm.
my default.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much. And um, we're going to keep on talking about this work to lead ourselves in this environment. And please know that you're not alone. I'm creating this space to work together. So come back soon. Thank you very much. See you later.
You.
Bye.